This is not a story about me, but rather, someone who I was very close to. I myself have suffered from depression as well, but that has been years past. When I say depression, I mean going to a professional and being told that you're not alright in the head, not being a Tumblr tard and self-diagnosing depression and various other bullshit afflictions. Anyways, sit back and listen. For all of my life I've been a fairly reserved person. I wasn't quiet to the point that everyone thought I was the next school shooter, but I wasn't exactly a social butterfly either. Being around too many people at once somewhat scared me, because that entails social interaction, and as far as I know, nobody is interested in talking about Warframe or any other game at parties. As such, I never went to prom, after-school senior parties, or any event that involved a large amount of people. Hell, I've never even visited the home of any of my friends, because knowing how to act without looking like a complete fucking tool is something I don't know how to do. For the most part, all of that was the norm for me until 1 year ago. A partner project was given out during my history class, and we were given a 3-month time limit to complete it. Everyone was given a randomly assigned partner, and mine just so happened to be a girl. I assumed I would be the one doing all of the work, since history was my best subject and the teacher liked me. However, this girl was so quiet I didn't notice she was even in the class to begin with. The first thing I noticed about her then and there was that she carried a tiger head backpack. The fact that I failed to even recognize this until now made me feel stupid for being so oblivious to even something so out of place. Her face was obstructed by her hair and by her hoodie, so I failed to get a good view of what she looked like. She politely introduced herself and explained that she had just moved in from Vietnam, and apologized for her accent, even though her English was actually pretty good. We agreed to meet after school in the library every day to work on the project, since she had to stay after anyways. 3:30 p.m. comes around and I'm already at the library, waiting for her to arrive. She comes into view after about 20 minutes, wearing a cheerleading shirt, sweatpants, and the very same tiger head backpack. I could see her face now, and she was easily a 7 out of 10. Worst of all, I found her cute. I was amused that someone as quiet as her was involved in cheerleading, as being loud as fuck was practically a requirement to be one. Out of curiosity, I asked her if she was on varsity. She shook her head and told me she was the school mascot. Out of all things, the fucking mascot. Never have I met anyone who was willing to be the mascot, let alone a girl, so I was both amused and shocked. At the time, I was in marching band, so I never even took notice of the mascot, let alone wondered who could be inside. After the basic "do you do anything?" and "where are you from?" back and forth questions, we got to work. Surprisingly, she did her part of the research, as my experience in working with females is do all the work while they're busy texting their chat of a boyfriend or talking to other girls in class. She was so unlike everything I expected from a girl that I had trouble focusing on what we were doing to begin with, to the point where I almost couldn't form coherent thoughts on account of how she was, well, attractive. She didn't seem to be bothered by me. 2 hours pass and we call it a day, agreeing to meet back every day at the same time. This went on for weeks, and we learn a little bit more about each other over time. Her dad stayed behind in Vietnam for his job, my dad moved with us to the US for his job. Her younger brother was a hyperactive and loud little bastard, my older sister was quieter than a rock. She told me of her obsession with drawing, I told her of mine with Warframe and Vauban, even though I was disappointed to learn she had never heard of Warframe. You know, stuff like that. With each passing day, we grew more and more accustomed to each other's presence, even having lunch together in the library rather than the cafeteria. Eventually, one of her friends pulls me aside and reveals that prior to meeting me, she was in her own little world. Nobody had ever seen her hang around other people for more than 10 seconds. Nobody had ever seen her start a conversation with another student. Nobody had ever seen her outside of a hoodie or oversized jacket. Nobody had ever seen her look happy. Apparently she was forced to meet with the counselor numerous times because of how self-isolated she seemed to both faculty and other students. It was rumored that she had been prescribed antidepressants, but that had never been confirmed. Because of me, I was told, she didn't look miserable all the time anymore. I've never thought it was possible for someone like me to be directly responsible for another person's change in behavior. I assumed she was only happy because I was a guarantee that she wouldn't potentially fail the class, so I decided to see if I was right. On our last day working together, I asked her out. She said yes so quickly I had to ask her again because I didn't hear what she had said. I didn't have a plan for the possibility of her saying yes, so I was completely lost on where to go from there. Over the course of the next 5 months, we spent every weekend together, from just going to the movies to chilling at the park until late at night. So long as it was possible, we were never apart. Even if it were something as simple as sitting together during a football game and talking shit about our own team, she was always there. For once, I was happy just to be with someone. My birthday comes around, and she tells me to meet her in a secluded area during lunch. After being waved over to a bench, she showed me a chibi drawing of Vauban she had made and asked me what I thought of it. I was stunned to see it, not because I thought it was good, but because she took time out of her day to make something for me, from a game she didn't even play. After I told her I thought it was great, she leaned over and kissed me. She smiled, wished me a happy birthday, and walked away. I sat there for a good 30 seconds, in shock. Then I started crying like a bitch. Nobody had ever been this affectionate to me before. Nobody had ever made something for me and only me before. Nobody had ever given me a reason to enjoy their company before. I believed I didn't deserve any of it. How could I? I wasn't a genius, an athlete, or a rich guy. I didn't have anything of value to offer to anyone, so how could I mean anything to someone else? Only a handful of people even knew me, and even less people in school knew that I was set to leave within 2 months for basic training in Illinois due to my entry into the Navy. Nobody would miss me, I believed. The very next day I approached her and revealed my military intentions, and that it would likely be best if we stopped seeing each other for a while, not because I hated her, but because communication between us would be rather impossible due to basic training, not to mention that I was unsure of when I could actually see her again. If she remained attached to me even when I was supposed to leave, waiting for me to return would be torture for her, I believed. She seemed at a loss for words, but she understood. Or so I thought. Slowly after our conversation she came around me and spoke with me less. Her interactions with other people became shorter and less frequent. She had never come back to me with a problem, complaint, or anything, so I assumed she decided to heed my words and move on with her life as to avoid becoming infatuated with me prior to departure. Or so I thought. Eventually graduation came and went, and I went from staying up late watching Netflix to marching, folding, and standing at attention. The months rolled by, and upon gaining access to the internet, I messaged her and asked how she was doing. No response. I tried again after a few hours. No response. Then after a few days. No response. I contacted a mutual friend of ours and asked if something was going on. I threw up upon reading the response. I thought she would be doing okay until I was told that her father had been in an accident and was now in a coma in Vietnam. I thought she would be doing okay until I was told she was living with her mom due to being rejected from all colleges she wanted to go to, even the one she had as a last resort. I thought she would be doing okay until I was told she had been diagnosed with clinical depression and had hung herself 4 days before I contacted her. 4 days. Just 4 days. I emptied the contents of my stomach and buried myself in blankets in my room for who knows how many hours. The time I spent pretending to not exist under my blankets I took to realizing how much of an idiot I had been for not once asking how she was coping and for believing everything I had believed out of assumption. If it weren't for me, a family wouldn't have lost their daughter. Do you know the feeling you got as a kid when you were caught lying and had to apologize out of feeling legitimately sorry? Multiply that feeling by 50,000, and that's just a fraction of how I felt. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to simply be forgotten by everyone and everything. I wanted to be away from everything and everyone I knew, so when I got the opportunity to be stationed overseas in Japan, I took it in a heartbeat. My time in Japan had been one of self-loathing and remorse until 3 weeks ago, when I received a text message from her phone. It was her mother. She asked me who I was and I explained myself and everything that had happened, including what I had told her daughter prior to my departure. Surprisingly, she wasn't angry, but rather sympathetic. She told me, She had a lot on her plate aside from her father and education. Even when she was young, she was always the type to be by herself. Until she met you, she had never talked about school or her personal life. I know you wish you had said something differently, but it's not your fault. If you were the source of her anguish, she would have said something to me, or said so in her diary. It's not your fault. Do you know the feeling you get when you pull out a splinter and still be hurting even when it's no longer in you? That's how I felt after reading those words. Now, you've probably noticed that I haven't mentioned her by name at all. That's because if you've paid close attention to my previous content, you already know what her name is. If you take away anything from this story, please let it be this. Always keep an eye on those you know and love. If there's irregularity or a cause to be asking questions, just say something to them. Please, just say something. Anything. Thank you for listening.